right, so I know you figured this out. You've been keeping count. Today we're going to be into part 30. I don't think I've ever thought I'd ever do 30 parts of anything. Wait till we get to part 50, then it'll really be fun. It'll be the jubilee of the heart of the matter. Okay, but right now we're up to part 30, and we're in Yirmiyahu. We're in Jeremiah, and this is the third part of Jeremiah. This is the third teaching we're doing within staying in Jeremiah. We'll be in Jeremiah here for a little while. And again, a reminder, as we go through Jeremiah, Jeremiah is dealing with some not really good stuff. And so he's being really strong, and I shouldn't say he's being really strong. Abba is being really strong through him because there's some stuff that's just not right that's going on. And our job is in reading Jeremiah is to say, how does this apply to me? Where am I in what's going on here? Is there stuff going on in my life that's also not right? And I think one of the things we're going to see today is, at least as part of some of the verses we're going to go through, is some insight as to why some of the things are not right and what kinds of things are not right. So let's begin in chapter 7. We're in chapter 7, Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu chapter 7, and we're going to begin in verse 21, but we're actually going to end up eventually reading the whole chapter, but we're going to read a section and then we're going to go back for context. A lot of times I'll go and read first the context to get to the point, and sometimes you'll see that it might make more sense teaching-wise to read the point first and then go back and explain the context. So we're going to start in verse 21. Verse 21, it says, "Thus said Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of Yisrael, add your burnt offerings to your slaughterings and eat meat. For I did not speak to your fathers or command them in the day that I brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim about matters of burnt offerings or slaughterings. But this word I did command them, saying, obey my voice, and I shall be your Elohim, and you be my people. And walk in all the ways that I commanded you, so that it be well with you. But they did not obey or incline their ear, but walked in the counsels of the stubbornness of their evil heart, and went backward and not forward. From the day that your fathers came out of the land of Mitzrayim until this day, I have even sent to you all my servants, the prophets, daily rising up early and sending them. But they did not obey me or incline their ear, but stiffened their neck. They did evil more than their fathers." Okay, so let's kind of break this thing down. So he starts off with this thing about offerings, and he said, but I didn't speak to your fathers or command them in that day that I brought them out of Egypt about these things. And he didn't. That came later. Okay? But what did he speak to them about? He said, I spoke to you about a covenant that is simplified in verse 23, says, my covenant being, obey my voice, and I shall be your Elohim, and you're my people, and walk in all my ways, and it will be well with you. I mean, isn't that what we all want? We want it to be well. People ask you how you're doing, and say, I'm doing well. Well, at least you'd like to say I'm doing well. You would like to hope that that's what you're feeling and that's how you're doing. And he's simply saying this, if you want to be doing well, obey my voice. Obey my voice. I mean, that is the covenant. People think the covenant's real complicated and they have to, memorize 613 commandments, etc. No, the covenant is simple, and if you keep the covenant, you'll be motivated to seek out what are his commandments. See, the covenant is very simple. I ask you to obey me, and you do that, and then I accept you as my people and give you all kinds of abundant wellness. I give you wellness financially, physically, and joy, all this abundance. That's his covenant. It's not a real complicated covenant. And so if you're excited about it, you would then seek to find out, what does he expect of me? What does it mean to obey his voice? What things is he saying that I need to be doing or not doing? And we talked about how the commandments are broken down into the positive and the negative. The positive commandments are things to do. The negative commandments are things not to do. And so he's breaking this down, and he goes, look, so I didn't talk about these slaughterings at first, because guess what? The first expectation was that we would obey his voice. Now, do we obey his voice? Not always. And so he put in place these slaughterings. The slaughterings have lots of purposes. I know that we're going to touch on some subjects that get people upset. Maybe not, maybe yes, we'll see. But the slaughterings serve many purposes. On one simple level, how many of you grew up in a household where there was a jar, and every time somebody did something, they had to put $1 in the jar or a quarter in the jar, right? Anything like that? Okay, and pretty quickly you made it a habit of making sure not to do whatever it was that made you have to put something in the jar, right? Well, guess what? If every time you did certain things, you had to go bring an animal and give it, an animal is a lot more than a quarter, whatever you were throwing in the jar, and you had to lose that animal and go give it up as an offering, you may get motivated to not be doing whatever it is that causes you to have to go do that on a regular basis. Does that make sense? So that was one simple level of that. And so, unfortunately, Christianity has this idea that Yeshua is the last end-all, be-all sacrifice because somehow he fulfilled the whole sacrificial system. Do we still make mistakes? Okay, so if there was a temple, there would still be a need for that system. And by the way, that system would still teach us to maybe be more motivated not to do certain things, not to break commandments like we do. Because we don't pay enough of a price sometimes and not immediately enough. And so this disconnect comes in where people think that what Yeshua did was connected to the sacrificial system. No. Even if they had not ever put in the sacrificial system, Yeshua still would have had to have come. You know why we know that? Because he was sacrificed or offered up from before the foundation of the earth. That was going to have to happen. The sacrificial system had nothing to do with it. And by the way, there was a sacrificial system going on all the way back to Cain and Abel. Why? Because people were still making mistakes and still doing things. And so people say, oh, but it's for forgiveness of sin. When we get to Leviticus in the Torah portions, I want you to show me which sacrifice in the first 5 chapters of Leviticus is for forgiveness of sin. You don't see that there. You're doing something that's required because sometimes of unintentional sin, sometimes because of an offering of some sort, whatever it is. By the way, there's no sacrifice that you'll find in there for intentional sin. Okay? And by the way, most of the time when you sin, it's intentional. In other words, you didn't do it completely not aware that it's a sin. Does that make any sense? Okay, let's be honest. I mean, if we're going to do this, might as well be honest about it, right? Almost every time that you do something, at least once it's been made aware to you that it is actually a sin to do, and you still do it, and we all do. We have those things that we know we shouldn't do, and we do it anyway. Not always, but we'll trip and we'll do it because we have a weakness in that area. That's still an intentional sin. You did it because you wanted to do it, and you still, in the back of your mind, knew you were not supposed to do it. There's no sacrifice for that when you look at the sacrificial system. There's only sacrifices for all these other things, including the unintentional sin. Do we all agree? Do you understand that? So Yeshua came to fulfill a bunch of other things. And one of those things had to do with also the marriage covenant and the fact that Israel had broken that marriage covenant. And needing to marry us again, there needed to be a death and all these other things that have to do with marriage. There's lots of more things that are involved. But the reason I'm going through all of this is because there are people out there that are who are proponents of this whole Melchizedekian versus Levitical thing that will use verses like this to say, oh, those sacrifices were added because of our transgression, and therefore that's what Yeshua did away with when he came. And that's just not true. They were still doing offerings and sacrifices before Moses. So we can't say that that's the case. What's the first thing that Noah did when he came off the ark? Sacrifices. Okay, what did Abraham do several times when certain things happened? And Isaac and Jacob, they made offerings and they did sacrifice. So you can't connect these things uniquely to Moshe and say, oh, well, this is. Now, what he did say is this. He said, I did not speak to your fathers or command them in that day regarding, I didn't give them commands about sacrifices because it was my desire that they would obey. And they didn't. But then again, they didn't since creation. And they're still not. Because that's sort of our human being failings as we're struggling the flesh against the spirit, so to speak, right? And so let's understand that when we're going through this, I want to just take that little piece out for a second just to cover it because it's not really part of the teaching for today. But there are people out there that you're going to run into that are using these verses as weapons to deal with, not to deal with, but to excuse or do away with some Torah observance. All of the apostles still went to the temple and did sacrifice even after Yeshua died. They did. And when Paul went through his trial and he was told to go do the Nazarite vow and pay for the expenses or the costs of the other guys, what do you think that was? What expenses did they have? The animals that needed to be offered. Because with the Nazarite vow, now, of course, you might say, well, it doesn't say anything about a Nazarite vow in Acts. Well, no, it doesn't, but that's what it was. Okay? You can do the research enough and understand the Hebraically what was going on, that's what it was. And if you read chapter 8, I'm pretty sure 8 or so of Numbers, then you'll see in Numbers that the Nazarite vow is described, requires certain things at the end of it that cost in terms of their offerings that must be made. Okay? And hair that has to be removed and things like that. Okay? And so this is what's going on. And so I just want to make sure we covered that, because as we go forward now and deal with the heart, I didn't want this other piece to be a distraction, because other people will try to make this a distraction. But the focus really is verse 23. The covenant is obedience. And abundance that comes, and wellness, I shouldn't even say abundance, being well on every level is connected to obedience. He says, so that it will be well with you. I don't think there's any one of us out here who doesn't want it to be well with us. Obedience brings wellness. I don't know if the health, wealth, gospels talk about that, but I'm saying is those guys out there that preach blah, blah, blah. He's saying here, obedience was going to bring it so that it may be well with you. All right. That's being offered. But then we have this other condition that we're dealing with that comes in the next verse. He says, but they did not keep the covenant. They did not obey. But notice what is connected to obeying. Inclining your ear. Okay, they didn't incline their ear, but walked in the counsels and the stubbornness of their evil heart and went backward, not forward. So, okay, let's break that down for a second. First of all, we have to really get away from a mindset that may even have a little bit still in you of thinking that the Creator is going to be doing more for you than that is reality. In other words, you may think He's going to do things for you that you have to do yourself. When I say do yourself, I don't mean on your own strength. I mean just do yourself. The inclining of the ear, He doesn't say that He would incline your ear. He says, you did not. They did not incline their ear. In other words, this is a free will choice that you have to actively participate by inclining your ear. Choosing to hear and not just have sound go in your ear, but actually hear, listen to, process so that it then gets obeyed. Because I've said things to my children, you've all had things said to you or you've said to your children, and you know they didn't hear a word you said. And then you get their attention and say, did you hear what I said? And they're looking at you like you're speaking Martian. Because they didn't. Because they did not incline their ear. That's an active participation that we are responsible for. He says they did not incline their ear, but they stiffened their necks. Okay? Now, as we're going through this, it's not just a lack of inclining the ear. Same thing with your children, same thing when you were children. It's because you had something else that was preoccupying or fully occupying your mind and your heart and your desires. You were already otherwise occupied and focused. That's why you get a child to say, hey, you, stop, look at me, right? We have to get children to say, hey, look at me. Stop what you're doing, right? Look. Okay, now you've got their attention. This is all Abba does, you see in the scriptures all the time. When they don't listen, he has to allow things to happen that get their attention. And that's all Jeremiah is trying to do, is say, people, listen, the Father's trying to get your attention. This can be okay. Just let him get your attention. Incline your ear. He said, no, but they were otherwise occupied. And what were they occupied with? The same thing that little children are occupied with. The desires of their own heart. He said, but you walked in the counsels and the stubbornness of their own heart. And he calls it an evil heart. I know that sounds harsh, but see, if you don't understand the scriptural definition of evil, you're not going to understand what he's talking about here. Because you may say, well, I'm not evil. Not according to the worldly definition, you might not be. Okay, because we think of evil on a certain level of like serial killers, crime bosses, rapists and pedophiles and whatever it is. We have this huge list of what we think evil is, right? Okay, but what happens when we get beyond that list? Scripture's talking about evil means those, what's evil? Not listening to Abba. Choosing your way over his ways, he calls that evil. Am I making sense? Read over and over again verses and verses about when will you stop inclining yourself and going after evil. He wasn't talking about a nation that was running around, killing babies and just whatever you want to. They just weren't doing that. Now, maybe a little bit here and there, obviously in a society, but as a whole, the nation was doing what? They weren't keeping the land Sabbaths and the Shemitah years. They weren't keeping the Jubilees. They weren't keeping the weekly Sabbaths. They were breaking the feast. They were breaking Torah. And that was considered evil. So we're going to define evil here for the purposes I'm going to at least choose. You can disagree with me. It's okay. I'm going to choose to define evil here as doing what you want when it's in conflict with what he wants. That's my definition of evil for the purpose of this verse. Okay, so he says, look, but they walked in the counsels of the stubbornness of what they wanted, which wasn't what he wanted. That's an evil heart. Okay, a heart that's after what you want, not what he wants. And they went backward and not forward. We were supposed to go forward. We were supposed to go forward. I mean, even Moses, Yahweh scolded Moses at one point there at the sea, as it was going to part and everything. He said, hey, you've stayed here long enough. Get moving. What are you waiting for? I told you go forward, go forward. So he wants us to go forward. So this is really key. We need to examine, is there anything going on where we're walking in the counsels? That's the key there, walking in the counsels. Some of you are not preferring the counsel of your scriptures, of your book, but you call people up seeking counsels. Or you get on Facebook, that's the best one. Nowadays, people do is they go on Facebook to seek counsel so they can find somebody that'll give them what they want to hear versus that's actually what they need to do. See, they're walking in the counsels of all the wrong counsels. Okay? So it says here, they didn't incline their ear. When it says they didn't incline the ear, that's actually not true. They did incline the ear. He's saying they didn't incline their ear to him. So I'm not saying Yahweh's wrong here. They did incline their ear to what? To the counsels that they were wanting to hear. He's saying, but they didn't incline their ear to me. But they certainly were ready to listen to their friend who was willing to tell them what they wanted to hear. Because you see, going on in Yirmiyahu's day, the king is going to be very happy to listen to the counsel of somebody who called himself a prophet and said, oh, no, don't listen to Jeremiah. He's wrong. And so the king inclined his ear to that prophet. And Jeremiah said, oh, man, what you just did, within a year, you're going to be dead. A year from now, you're going to be dead because what you just did. Because not only did you say what you said, but you caused the king to incline his ear to you, when the king should have inclined his ear to Yahweh, and I speak for Yahweh, you don't. Yirmiyahu's like, I'm speaking for him, not you. So yeah, people are inclining their ears. So you may want to ask yourself, where am I inclining my ears? Where am I seeking counsel? Look, I'm going to scold you guys right now. I hope you don't mind. But you know what? There's a lot of you out there who still won't call me when you need counsel. You don't. I don't know why. But you don't. And so many of you can give, you know what, I wish there was, I know it's private stuff, so you can't really do it. But there are so many of you in this room that do call for counsel that could give you that testimony, not because I'm such a genius, but because when I am asked for counsel, I try to get out of the way and allow him to speak, to give the words of counsel. And you've received good counsel. I know you have, because you've come back to me and told me how much it helped and it worked. And it's not about me. It's about me giving you what I felt Abba wanted to have. But a lot of you still will not call for counsel. But you'll go right on Facebook to get counsel. You'll call each other to get counsel. But why won't you? You won't call me. You won't. Some of you may even call Rabbi Tom, but you won't call him either. You won't call for counsel. And then, of course, what happens is people say, well, we know you're busy. Well, what do you think I'm busy doing? I'm talking to people like you. So why can't it might as well be you then? Because when you call me, if I'm telling you I'm busy, it's because I'm already on the phone with somebody else giving counsel. So why couldn't it be you? Okay, I've never had anybody call who I didn't either make myself available right then for counsel or call them back in the same day. Okay? If it ever happened once, it was just by pure, absolute, something totally got in the way, and so then you got to call the next day. But I'm just saying is, counsel. People are still, every time you're in a situation, I promise you, you're seeking counsel. You are. You'll ask somebody an opinion. Well, I'm in this situation. What would you do? We call that seeking counsel. Well, what qualifies the person that you're asking? Oh, well, they're my friend. Okay, so they like you and have your best interest, but are they actually qualified to answer your question? I'm not saying your friends are never qualified. I'm just saying. Or are you looking for counsel that's going to tell you that what you really want to do is the right thing? Because there is a leaning that you'll have inside of something that you say, you know what? Not really sure what to do here. I know what I'd like to do. I know what I prefer to do. I have a sense that maybe I shouldn't, though. So what do? You're looking for a Pharaoh moment where it said that Yahweh strengthened his heart in the direction it wanted to go. Well, you're looking for his counsel of people that will strengthen your heart in the way he wants to go already. And so we seek that. And you know what? If you put it out there in a Facebook group that's got 1,000 members, at least one person is going to run in there and say exactly what you want to hear. Absolutely. And by the way, shame on all of you that are so quick to give counsel to everybody on Facebook, then you don't even necessarily know what you're talking about. And I'm serious. You know, if you've been doing this for a year, you don't know what you're talking about. If you've been doing it for 5 years, you still probably don't know what you're talking about. And I'm not trying to be offensive. I'm just saying do you realize that once you give that counsel, if that person takes that counsel, you are now responsible for them taking your counsel? Do we all understand that? So why are we so quick to just jump right in there? And I watch, because people will draw my attention to the feedback that's going on, because then somebody will ask me to finally jump in after it's already become a disastrous confusion. Somebody will finally say, put my name in it so it pops up in an email to me to get my attention to jump into the fray. But at that point, it's already chaos and confusion, because so many different voices have already spoken into it. And so I would be very reluctant to jump in there. And actually, if you notice, I very rarely do jump into the public discussions. And some of you know that when you put it out there, I've contacted you privately to answer your question and not put it in the public discussion, because the arguing had already started and I didn't want to get into a big fight and debate over it. It wasn't going to help anybody. And so let's understand that the counsels of walking in the counsels is the problem here. Okay? I know we're just really killing this verse, but you know what? This verse is killing you. Because that's what we do. We walk in the wrong counsels. We don't know how to seek proper counsel. And we do that in stubbornness, and that's the key. When he says in stubbornness, why is the word stubbornness there? It's because there's definitely that word there, right? In the verse, that word proves my point that you have a preference. And so you're stubbornly wanting to find counsel that backs up your preference. That's where the stubbornness comes. Because if you ask for counsel and you want to do A and the first counsel says B, then you know what you're going to be? You're going to be stubborn and seek for a second one. And if it still says something else, you're going to be stubborn. That's where the stubbornness is. I'm going to keep going until I find one I like. And Abba's telling you this is foolishness. As a matter of fact, he calls it an evil heart that does this. He said, if you're doing this, you have an evil heart. Yikes. I'm not saying it. He said it. He says, those who are walking in the counsels and the stubbornness of their evil heart are the ones that don't obey and don't incline their ear. And so what are you doing? You're going backwards and not forwards. You're going backwards and not forwards. He says, look, he says, from the day that your fathers came out of the land of Mitzrayim until this day, I have even sent to you all my servants, the prophets, daily rising up early and sending them. In other words, he's saying, look, you have no excuse. I sent those who were supposed to be there to teach you. Now, notice he doesn't say, I talked to you directly. I sent the Spirit, and the Spirit tried to tell you. He says, no, I sent physical human beings who represented me, whose role it was and job and responsibility was to share with you and set you straight, and you didn't want, you know what, you didn't like what they said, so you wrote them off as being phony baloney and didn't give them any credence, and you just wiped them out. You know, get away from me. And you're going to see Jeremiah gets treated exactly that way, doesn't he? Now, we know, reading now in 2020 hindsight, we know exactly who Jeremiah was. And Jeremiah represented himself to them, but you know what? They said, no, we don't believe you. You're not really sent by Yahweh. We've got other guys here that say what we want them to say, who say they're from Yahweh. We like them better. We like those guys better. And by the way, when we read this and we see what's going on, it's so easy for us to go, what's wrong with these people? Do you know what, though? And I'm certainly not claiming I'm Jeremiah or anybody else that's walking around today is on the level of Jeremiah, but has Abba sent people that you're supposed to listen to that you're not listening to? Have we really made an effort to seek? See, the king and the kingdom here of Israel, or of Judah here, is not seeking to really vet out Jeremiah. They just don't like what he's saying because it doesn't match where their evil heart is, and so right away, there's just totally out of complete disregard. They just write him off. They didn't give him a chance. There was no vetting going on here. Okay, Jeremiah, you claim what you claim. Okay, let's kind of work through this and see if you really are who you say you are. None of that's going on. He's telling them, repent, you guys are doing the wrong things. You're not obeying. If you would just look to Yahweh and not Egypt, look to Yahweh and not other sources, this will be fine. And they said, we don't like that choice. So you must be false. This guy over here, we like his choice. He must be true. Do we do that? Are we finding ourselves doing that? Yikes. Then we're acting just like these guys. He said, look, I sent these guys. He said, but they did not obey me or incline their ear, but they stiffened their neck. Stiffen their neck means it's kind of like someone getting their back up again. You know, I got my back up and I'm digging. You know, we have all these phrases. I'm digging in my heels. That person's got his back up and he's got his, he's all bowed up or whatever. I'm going to stand and I'm going to defend and you're not telling me what to do. Well, we call that stiff-necked. And the reason it's called stiff-necked is because you can't bow with your neck stiff. In other words, it's the bending of that neck is the bowing of that head down. He said they would not bow their head to me. The Father's saying, yeah, look, they won't bow their head to me. They're stiff-necked. He says they did evil even more than their fathers. Now, when he says evil more than the fathers, I'm going to guess here it's not just in quantity. He's going to say, look, the more you saw what happened, and the more you witnessed the fruit of the wrong behavior, and the more you saw Deuteronomy 28, the second half, play out, the curses, and the more I sent prophets to you, the more that if you're still doing this foolishness, you're actually doing more evil than your fathers. Because you've had more examples, more witnesses, more time, more evidence. The evidence is stronger. Am I making sense? So therefore, you're doing the same dumb thing your fathers did is actually worse. You saw what happened to them, and you're still doing it. And by the way, it's over 2,000 years since this. So how much worse are we then? If we're not listening and we're not doing. I mean, it's even tougher. He says, but they did not obey. He said they did even more evil. Now, so let's get some context on this. Let's go back to verse 1. We'll stay in chapter 7. I want to kind of get the context of what's going on here. Okay? The word that came to Yirmiyahu from Yahweh saying. Now, first of all, that's very important in these writings is that Yirmiyahu is making it very clear. He's claiming this is the word that came from Yahweh. And if it didn't come from Yahweh, this man's in big trouble. Okay, people were out there claiming, and we have in Ezekiel, we read that I think last week, Ezekiel 22, they said Yahweh said when Yahweh had not said. So you got to be careful. Ezekiel, Yahweh speaks to Ezekiel and talks about it in Ezekiel 22. So here is the same idea. He says, look, this is the word that came to Yirmiyahu from Yahweh saying, stand in the gate of the house of Yahweh, and you shall proclaim there this word and shall say, hear the word of Yahweh, all you of Yehudah who enter into at these gates to bow before Yahweh. Thus said Yahweh of hosts, the Elohim of Yisrael, make your ways and your deeds good, then I let you dwell in this place. Okay, so now he's over there by the temple, and he's saying to the men of Judah, he's saying, look, hear the word. So you who want to enter these gates, you want to come in here into my temple. You claim to be of, children of the living Elohim, the chosen people, blah, blah, blah. He says, make your ways and your deeds good, and then I will let you dwell in this place. Now notice the active instruction here. He didn't say, I will do this for you. He says, you make your ways good. Now you don't know how to. We know in other places it says that it's not in man to even know how to place his own feet. So we need to get guidance and counsel and instruction from Yahweh. But then we actually have to do it. We have to actually go ahead and make our ways and our deeds good. And you say, well, I don't know how to do that. Well, yes, you do. You have an instruction manual. Okay, you have the Torah. This is an instruction manual that tells you how to do good deeds and have right ways. By the way, it says, make your ways. So what do we think of really quick? We talks about the way. Yeshua in John 14 says, I am the way. Make your ways and your deeds good. So you're going to need to follow the ways of Yeshua, the ways of the truth, the ways of the Torah. Let the verses all connect up. I didn't even have that in my notes. But again, as I'm speaking, that's what the Ruach sort of connected for me is John 14. When I read the word way, whenever he talks about your ways, Yeshua says, I am the way. So if my way doesn't match his way, I'm going the wrong way. All right? If my way doesn't match his way, I'm going the wrong way. He says, do not trust in these false words, saying, this is the shekel of Yahweh, the shekel of Yahweh, the shekel of Yahweh. In other words, people were walking around going, we've got the temple. This is the dwelling of Yahweh. We've got the temple. So obviously, that makes us special and justifies anything we want to do. Because after all, what they're saying is, it's like an endorsement. He's endorsing what we're doing. After all, he's dwelling with us. Why would he dwell with us if he didn't like what we're doing? And what did Jeremiah just say? He just said, look, if you want to dwell in this place, you better start listening to me. Make your ways and your deeds good, and I'll let you dwell in this place. You don't, I'm going to throw you out. I'm not endorsing all of this stuff that you think I'm endorsing. Oh, but the shekel of Yahweh, the shekel of Yahweh. Yeah, okay, great. He says, for if you truly make your ways and your deeds good, and if you truly do right ruling between a man and his neighbor, okay? So not only making your ways good, but justice, fairness, righteousness amongst man and his neighbor. If you do not oppress the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow, and do not shed innocent blood in this place, or walk after other mighty ones to your own evil. You see how that plays into later in the chapter? What would this idea of walking after other mighty ones to your own evil? What evil? The evil heart. In other words, walking after a mighty one that sounds like or looks like is going to give you what you want. The way you want it, how you want it, as opposed to getting what you really need and is really actually good for you by doing what he wants, the Creator wants. He says, so don't walk after other mighty ones to your own evil. Then, if you do that, if you do all these things I just read, he says, then I shall let you dwell in this place, in the land that I gave to your fathers forever and ever. Because what was the covenant? If you obey, I will take you as my people and set you up on a hill and make you a shining example to the world, so the world would want to be doing what you're doing to receive what you got. That's the witness. People should be running to you going, whatever it is you've got, I want it. Because you've got shalom when we don't. You've got abundance when we don't. You're smiling and have joy when we don't. In other words, they were supposed to be what would provoke the world to jealousy. Not jealousy to attack, but jealousy to say, how do I get what you've got? What's the secret? And you say, obedience to Yahweh. That's the secret. Oh, there you go, Rabbi. You're talking all kinds of works, salvation, works this, works that. No, I'm reading what the book says. I'm not talking anything but what it says. Obedience is the covenant. If you're walking around out there and you meet people that go to, Covenant Baptist Church, Covenant Methodist Church, Covenant, all of these churches are covenant. Really? What covenant? Oh, the new one. Well, there already is in existence a covenant. The covenant says, if you obey, I take you as my people. That covenant's never changed. That is the covenant. And there's a renewing of that covenant because it was broken, not by him, but by us or our ancestors. Continuing. He says in verse 8, he says, see, you are trusting in the false words which do not profit, stealing, murdering, and committing adultery, and swearing falsely, and burning incense to Baal, walking after other mighty ones you have not known, and you came and stood before me in this house, which is called by my name, and said, we have been delivered in order to do all these abominations. Oh boy. He says, this is almost like a person who's he's just had enough. He said, and you did all this stuff, and you came into my house? And you stood in my house? That's really what Yahweh's sounding like right here. And you did all of that stuff, and you came in and said, we have been delivered in order to do all of this? Tell me how that doesn't sound like mainstream Christianity today. We are delivered. You could put the word saved in there. It's the same word. What you're saying is we have all been saved so that we can do abominations. What's abomination? Breaking the commandments. He says, you're going to come and stand in my house and say you're saved so that you can do all abominations. Am I stretching this too far? It seems to me it's exactly what it says. That's Peshat. That's not Remez, Drash, and so that's Peshat. He said, look, you're saying you're saved, you're delivered. For what purpose? So that you can do abominations? He goes, has this house, which is called by my name, become a den of robbers in your eyes? Look, even I myself have seen it, declares Yahweh. Anybody picture Yeshua flipping a few tables? When he came in the flesh, he said, you know what? You guys still haven't fixed this. I'm going to take care of it. Now, let me tell you something. You've got money changers, okay? And you've got all this other stuff going on in the temple, and it's probably because there was unequal weights going on. There was ripping off going on. Look, money changing was necessary. So it wasn't just that they were money changing. Okay, because after all, you came from somewhere, you didn't have the lamb that you needed or the bull that you needed, whatever, so you came, you gave money, and they changed you out so that and plus you came with money from another town, and whatever, these things needed to be done, but they were ripping people off. But here's the thing. Do you think that with all that money going on, these people had bodyguards and other people around them? And nobody even flinched or blinked as Yeshua threw the whole thing upside down and inside out. Okay, there wasn't anybody willing to even think to step up to him because he was showing the power that is Yahweh in the flesh. I mean, think about it. With all that business going on, you know there were some tough guys standing around like this watching the money box, you know, with their arms crossed, maybe with a cudgel or a sword or some other thing. I mean, there was something going to be, and Yeshua, nobody stopped him. Nobody even made a move to him, so as far as the scripture says. And he went and flipped over the tables and started, he read them the riot act right there. But didn't he say the same thing as this? He's not saying anything different than he said here through Jeremiah when he says, has this house, which is called by my name, become a den of robbers in your eyes? Look, even I have seen it, declares Yahweh. But go now to my place at Shiloh, where I set my name at the first, and see what I did to it because of the evil of my people Yisrael. And now, and I'm not going to get into all those details right here. We're just going to keep going forward. And now, because you've done all these works, declares Yahweh, and I spoke to you, rising up early and speaking, but you did not hear, and I called you, but you did not answer. So he's making it clear, I did my part. I didn't just hand you a bunch of stuff and say, okay, you're on your own. He said, look, I came to you, I spoke to you, I rose up early speaking, but you did not hear, and I called you, and you did not answer. He did his part. He said, and I shall also do this house, which is called by my name. He says, in which you trust, and in this place which I gave to you and your fathers I did to Shiloh, and I shall cast you out of my presence, as I've cast out all your brothers, all the seed of Ephraim. Because remember now, Judah's in much bigger trouble to some degree than Ephraim was, because they saw what happened to Ephraim, and they're still doing this stuff. And the only reason why Judah survives through all of this is because he made a promise that the scepter would not depart. See, you have promises here that Judah would be there. But Judah was going to suffer for it, and he wasn't going to let them stay in the land either. He said, I'm throwing you out. I'm going to throw you out. He says, and you, says, do not pray for this people, nor lift up a cry or a prayer for them, nor make intercession to me, for I do not hear you. Oh boy. Because after all, we get all kinds of people asking me all the time to pray for this, pray for that, and pray for this. Pray. You know what? If Abba is doing his punishing that they deserve and they have earned and it's coming, he says, don't you pray. Oh, don't you pray. I'm working with them. Don't you pray against this. I'm not listening. That's pretty scary stuff. So let's be careful. Oh, this always gets me in trouble. You know, when we have all these people out there that have become very Zionistic, in other words, they just love Israel, nothing wrong with that, but they have a blind spot to the point where they're always saying, pray for the peace of Jerusalem, pray. Well, the psalm isn't talking about the Jerusalem we have right now. That Jerusalem has a punishment that he already decreed is coming. So I'm not praying against that. Because that, I think, fits into this verse. He says, oh, no, do not pray for this people. You think Abba likes that, Tel Aviv is like the homosexual capital of the world? You think Abba's all thrilled with that? You think he likes the way the Temple Mount is? And what's going on in Jerusalem? I'm not praying for them. I'm praying for what the psalm is really talking about, the Jerusalem that's coming. Because when the psalm was written, it was praying for a Jerusalem that should never have been allowed to be destroyed because they had time to keep it that way back then. But they blew it back then, and now we have other prophets that have told us what is going to happen. So let's not all get excited that somehow Netanyahu is going to fix everything, or whoever the next guy is. We already told in the book it's not happening. Zechariah 14 says this is going to happen. The armies of the world are coming to gather around against Jerusalem. Why? Because they did this disastrous stuff, just like they did here in Judah. The same stuff was going on in Judah here in Jeremiah, and what happened? He brought a massive army to come and take them away. Well, guess what? Another massive army is coming. Any surprise? It's not the first time that we're reading about the time it happened in Jeremiah's day. He says, look, and I'm just reading here, he says, do not pray for them, nor lift up a cry or a prayer for them, nor make intercession to me. Don't even make intercession. Why? Because he says, I'm already sending the prophets to them. I'm already crying out to them. You understand what I'm saying? Are you listening to what he's saying? He's saying it's not because there's not enough of you praying for them. The reason this is happening is not for a lack of intercession. It's for a lack of obedience and a lack of heart. Israel today has no heart. Not in a full complex way, not as a cohesive nation, they have no heart. Now, I'm not against it existing. I like that there's a haven or a place for Jews to go if they need to go. But that place has no heart. Because how do you know? Look at Jerusalem. That's an abomination. How could they have agreed in 1948 to that? And when they had the wars that they had and they took over, why did they ever give it back? Because they have no heart. Their heart is wrong. So be careful with all of that. And I'm not saying it's my opinion. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you could have one opinion that says he's only talking about right here, this thing for Judah, not to pray for them. Or can we extrapolate out a remez, a hint here, that maybe there are situations that exist today where we need to not be praying about it. That Abba's working that deal out, and it's just going to have to happen the way it's going to have to happen. I'm just reading it to you. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I'm just reading it to you. He says, look, do you not see what they are doing in the cities of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem? That's verse 17. And I'll ask you the same thing. Do you not see what's happening over there in Israel? Oh, I know. Everybody's all excited just to see, okay, they see the bombings, they see Hezbollah, they see Hamas. Well, no. Do you see what the Israel people are doing, not the bombings and everything else? Do you see the lifestyle? Do you see what they're promoting? Do you see what they're allowing in there? I mean, look, you got a giant mosque on the Temple Mount. What more do you need? I mean, you got this, He says, the children are gathering wood, the fathers are lighting the fire, the women are kneading their dough to make cakes for their sovereignesses of the heavens and to pour out drink offerings to other mighty ones to provoke me. Okay, the whole point is that this is provoking him. I mean, do you not understand that? That when he looks down at Israel today, when he looks down at Jerusalem today, when he looks at Tel Aviv and all these other places, this provokes him. This is his land. He says, this is my land that I promised to your fathers, and look what you've done to that place. He says, is it me they are provoking? Declares Yahweh, is it not themselves unto the shame of their own faces? But you see, there's no shame. There's no shame. Do you ever see them standing up with shame? Where is Netanyahu and those guys cleaning up Tel Aviv? Where is that? This whole world, look, I'm going to take a side road here for 2 seconds. This whole world is just getting completely off the deep end. There is a process. Okay, this is a process I've observed. It's not written anywhere, I don't think, but I observed this process. There are things in this world that at one time were relatively, generally, universally accepted as being aberrant, unacceptable, wrong. Okay? In other words, you ask the average person, is this acceptable? And everybody said no. Then some of those things over time became the next stage, which is tolerated. We need to tolerate that thing, whatever it is. Then it went from tolerated to acceptable. Well, we have to accept it. Not just tolerate it, accept it. And guess what the next stage is? Embraced. Preferred. You're seeing this in the homosexual community. I mean, I'm listening to Democratic candidates, and I'm not political. I'm just telling you what I'm seeing on the TV. Candidates talk about the LGBT. I didn't know what that was. I thought it was a union or something. I had to look it up. Oh, and we want to make sure we're meeting the needs of this people and that people in the LGBT community. The LGBT community, what's LGBT? That's lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender. That's now a group we need to make sure that not only is acceptable, it's now becoming preferred. Where was it back in the day when, Lucy and Ricky had to make sure to have separate beds and have one foot on the floor if the TV was showing them in the bedroom? Now, we're promoting to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the LGBT. And while I'm listening to this on the news, scrolling across the bottom of the screen is court cases arguing whether or not it should be approved for a child to go to the bathroom he prefers to identify him with. And so now, every teenage boy is going to go, oh, I'm a girl. I want to go in a girl's locker room. Yeah. So how do we, and how do you vet that? How do you prove that really is how they see themselves? I'm sorry, if you've got the wrong anatomy, you go to the bathroom that matches your anatomy. I don't care what's going on in your head. Because I can't prove what's going on in your head. I know the anatomy you have. You got the right anatomy to be in the men's room, you better be in the men's room. You got the anatomy for the girls, and then you go to the girls' room. Now, if you want to go to the other one, go get your anatomy changed. And I'm not for that. I'm just saying, you really want to make that point? Well, then prove your point. Go change your anatomy. Because otherwise, I ain't buying it. But I'm saying, look at how it's gone. Homosexuality, transgender, bisexual, all that other stuff was completely abhorrent only a generation ago. Okay? And now it's gone so quickly from abhorrent to tolerated. When I was very young, it was tolerated. Okay? And then it went from everybody was still in the closet, but it was tolerated. And then people would come out and we sort of tolerated them. Then it's become glorified. Hey, it's acceptable now. Everybody's just come on out and declare what they are because after all, we accept you now. And now you can see there's actually a leaning towards it being preferred. You guys who are only one gender or whatever, or just you guys who are happy being what you are, there's something wrong with you. That's really what you're seeing. This is Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, this is really where it's gone. And by the way, this was going on here in Jeremiah. All that stuff was happening in the land. The homosexuality, the transgender, the confusions, the sin of every possible sexual type. This is Sodom and Gomorrah was going on also here. And we wonder what in the world's going on. I can't imagine if your kids are in public school what they're learning. Because after all, there's being made provisions now for all of this. And I'm telling you, I watched it across. Sometimes the most important things are the things that are on the bottom of the screen. Don't just listen to the talking, the very pretty looking, good looking, talking heads. They got these male and female models, saying whatever they're saying now in the news. So that you look at them and say, oh, look at how good looking they are. No, read that little stuff across the bottom. That's probably the more important stuff. That's the stuff they just want to make sure you know, but you're really not paying attention. Okay? And so there it is. And so and Julie and I were watching, and she's the one who caught it. She said, oh, did you? So I had to, hit the rewind button, and and see the beginning of it. And it was talking about the court case going on in whatever state it was going on in, where they're actually trying to pass laws to allow a child to go into whatever bathroom he or she personally chooses and says, I identify more with that. This is where it is. I mean, I almost cannot believe in my lifetime the incredible speed with which this has happened. You know? I mean, I can't even tell you how many TV shows that I've watched. And I don't watch a lot of TV, but I've given a few shows a shot. And all of a sudden in the show, two of the characters are kissing in the same gender. Has nothing to do with the show, has nothing to do with the plot. They're just trying to gain that comfort and acceptance with it being there. And I'm looking at the screen going, why was that necessary? It had nothing to do, nothing would have been missed in the show if that wasn't a part of it. It wasn't a part of the plot. But yet, they want to get us comfortable with this stuff. You know, once upon a time, my wife liked to watch The Amazing Race because she liked to see all the countries. And watch people travel around the world and they do these kind of silly tasks and whatever, right? You can't watch an episode of that anymore where they don't have at least a gay or 2 or 3 couples on there because they want to promote that whole agenda. And they want to and they promote it as such a great, and we should all be so proud of them and everything else. And I don't hate them. But why are we elevating it and praising it? And you see what I'm saying? Look at the world we're in. Anyway, that was my sort of side. But this is what was going on here, though. Can we see that? And so here we're supposed to pray for Jerusalem and all these other things. Jerusalem is the capital of this kind of craziness, and like Tel Aviv. Am I wrong? We all know this, right? People who are aware of what's going on in Israel know that Tel Aviv is just Sodom or Gomorrah or whatever. I mean, it's just gone, it's horrible. It glorifies that lifestyle. What can we do? We pray Yeshua. Do you want to pray? Pray Yeshua come soon and take care of it all. Don't pray for Jerusalem. Don't pray for that. Pray Yeshua come. Do whatever. Just get it done. Okay? We're ready. Because I don't want my children, imagine if he doesn't come for another 30, 40 years, what my grandchildren are going to be. What kind of world is it? I mean, the whole world is Sodom and Gomorrah now. I mean, they won't be able to watch any TV, any movie, nothing, because it's all going to have all that in it. All of it. You won't be able to do anything. Except you can find some oldie station or something where you can watch something, and the kids will be, oh, that's so boring. This is the world we're in. And it's not so different than the one Yirmiyahu is talking to. That's the sad part. And evil, even more than our fathers, is what you see going on in this world today. Continuing here. We get back to verse 19. And what's the bottom line in all this? He says there's no shame. He says, is it me they're provoking, declares Yahweh? Is it not themselves unto the shame of their own faces? But people walk around doing all this stuff and there's no shame. None. No shame at all. Therefore, thus said the Master Yahweh, verse 20 now, see, my displeasure and my wrath is poured out on this place, on man and on beast and on the trees of the field and on the fruit of the ground, and it shall burn and be quenched, and not be quenched. Yeah, he's not happy with this stuff. He is not happy with this stuff. He's going to pour out his... And isn't that the same thing we read about in that terrible day of Yahweh, the great and awesome day of Yahweh that's coming? This is just a small little piece of it. Just like a little taste of what it could look like. Let's continue it by going to the end of the chapter. We're going to finish where we stopped at. We stopped in verse 26. Now let's go to verse 27, okay? We're going to continue. So we had already read 21 through 26, and verse 27 says, and you shall speak all these words to them, though they do not listen to you, and you shall also call to them, though they do not answer you. And that's the responsibility, sadly, of people like me now in front of a microphone. You're going to say this stuff, and hopefully somebody's listening, but a lot of them won't. He says, you speak these words, and they're not going to listen. He says, but you shall say to them, this is a nation that did not obey the voice of Yahweh their Elohim, nor did they accept instruction. Truth has perished and has been cut off from their mouths. They would not accept instruction. Okay, again, I know I'm beating this to death because it's still the problem out there. To have instruction, what do you think there needs to be? Instructors. Right? You're not going to get instruction without an instructor. Somebody has to teach. Just like Paul says, how can one learn unless someone shares? And how can one share unless somebody sends them? And how can one be sent? You know what I'm saying? That whole thing that Paul talks about. So here he says, look, they did not accept instruction. And we know there are other verses that we read already today. We said, I had the prophets coming and they woke up early and they were sent and nobody listened to them. They were given instruction. He said, truth has perished. What is truth? The Torah is truth. Yeshua is truth. So what is he saying? We know Yahweh here speaking is the same as Yeshua, right? We talk about that in the Father and the Son teaching. So he says truth has perished. In other words, their connection and relationship to Yahweh has been done away, perished. It's just gone away. Has been cut off from their mouth. He says, cut off your hair and throw it away and take up a lamentation on the bare heights, for Yahweh has rejected and forsaken the generation of his wrath. For the children of Yehuda have done what is evil in my eyes, declares Yahweh. So he says Yahweh has rejected and forsaken. Now, we're not going to get to it today, but when we get to chapter 9, there's going to be a verse that uses the word forsaken. And it talks about them, meaning the people, having forsaken him. The word there in the Hebrew has this idea of departed from, abandoned, or left behind. So he's saying here that Yahweh has rejected and abandoned, departed from, and left behind the generation of his wrath. For the children of Yehuda have done what is evil in my eyes. He says, declares Yahweh, they have set their abominations in the house which says, called by my name to defile it. And they have built high places of Topheth, which is in the valley of the son of Hinnom, to burn their sons and their daughters in the fire, which I did not command, nor did it come to my heart. Okay, now we finally get to another verse with the word heart in it. So now he's saying, look, this actions, this behavior, what they're doing did not come to my heart. I want to give you at least a thought of what he refers to when he keeps talking about, when you read scriptures, you'll find a bunch of places where it says, this didn't come to my heart, or this wasn't in my heart. So what we're going to put in there is the Torah. In other words, the Torah is his heart. So when he says, look, I did not command, nor did it come into my heart. It's not in my Torah. It's not in my instructions. I never made instructions about this. Because guess what? Out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. That's the same thing true for the Father. So when you read what Yahweh says, his heart is his commands. He spoke and gave us these instructions. This is his heart. He said, this did not come into my heart. It was never in my heart for you to do this dumb stuff. Therefore, see, verse 32, the days are coming, declares Yahweh, when it shall no longer be called Topheth, or the valley of the son of Hinnom, but the valley of the slaughter. For they shall burn in Topheth until no room is left. And the corpses of this people shall be for food for the birds of the heavens and for the beasts of the earth, and none to frighten them away. And in the cities of Yehuda and in the streets of Jerusalem I shall make to cease the voice of rejoicing and the voice of gladness and the voice of the bridegroom and the voice of the bride, for the land shall become a waste. When are we going to wake up? They didn't. They didn't. Babylon came, took them away. They didn't. Are we going to make the same mistakes? The world is making the same mistakes. But you know what? There were those that escaped even when Babylon came, including Jeremiah. Okay, Jeremiah they actually found him out and said, are you Jeremiah? Great, you're supposed to go. You're supposed to be okay. Abba took care of who he needed to take care of. But guess what? He only took care of the ones that were doing the right things, that were doing what brings, so it may be well with you, that brings that about. Doing the things that bring about wellness, protection, safety. Because otherwise he said, look, I'm going to lay waste to everything else. And he said, man, beast, animals, everything, I'm going to, the whole thing, desolate wasteland. Let's wipe the whole thing out. And by the way, the day of Yahweh that's coming is a worldwide scale of this. This is just a Israel scale. Actually, it's a southern kingdom of Judah scale. It's not even a whole Israel. Judah wasn't that big a place. Now we're talking about a worldwide scale. This is a type and shadow of that. This is what the world is bringing on itself. Sodom and Gomorrah was a type and shadow of this. He wiped it out with the fire and brimstone. That's what's coming. The world, you know what? Noah and the flood was a type and shadow of this. He said all that was in their hearts was to do evil continually. I mean, this is scary stuff. This is scary stuff. All right, I think we're going to end here. That's a little bit shorter for today. My wife is watching and probably thinking, of course it's shorter because I'm not teaching the kids class today. But I don't want to start chapter 9 and all of that we're going to have to deal with in chapter 9, with only a few minutes left to go, because we only can squeeze in maybe another 7 or 10 minutes anyway. So let's go ahead and go before the Father. Avinu Malkeinu, our Father, our King. Father, we come before you. And Father, help us not to make the same mistakes as what we're reading about in this book. The mistakes of our forefathers, the mistakes of those who had the heart to walk in the counsels of their evil heart as opposed to walking in your counsels. Help us to have a heart to obey your voice. Help us to incline our ears. Help us to be moldable in your hand and be receptive. Help us to have a supple neck, not a stiff neck. Help us not to dig in our heels for the wrong things, but to dig in our heels to be obedient. To cling and cleave ourselves to you. Father, we see the world going down in a very fast spiraling down into the abyss. And we know the only hope and the only solution is you. So, Father, help us to be those that would be found so doing. That would be found to hear the words, well done, you good and trustworthy servant. Father, help us to have a heart after your heart. Help us to have the humility and the wisdom to, no matter how what you want may be different than what we see, that we would always put what you want first and foremost and above all. So, Father, we know that the world is getting worse. We know how challenging things are, and so we know how much even more and more every day we need you. We need your strength. We need your spirit. We need your wisdom and understanding and discernment, and also, above all things, we need the shalom that only can come from you, that shalom that goes beyond understanding. So, Father, we submit ourselves to you now, asking that you would give us such a heart to sit, to obey and listen to and do what you have asked us to do, to hear your voice and to receive it and to be excited to go forward, not backward. Father, we love you. We thank you and praise you and know that you desire us to do these things, but we also know that you desire to help us along the way by giving us the encouragement, the strength, and etc., if we would only be receptive to receive. And so, Father, we thank you and we praise you and appreciate all that you're doing in our lives as we come before you under the authority of our soon-coming King, Yeshua, our Messiah. And we say together, Amen ve'amen.